soil and water soil and water management research and development. Allow me to present to you the soil and water resources research and development. So this is a very basic and critical topic in so far as research and development is concerned. As you would see on your screen, the soil and water, these are very basic resources where we produce our food. So soil is where the food begins. So my presentation would be in three parts. First is why undertake research and development. So in this first topic, I would be discussing partly the status of soil and land resources and ecological services. And second, I would be sharing with you some research and development direction and challenges in soil science and technology as we view it from the lens of the global, regional perspective, as well as the national lens. And thirdly, I would be presenting the Bureau of Soils and Water Management, its role, the paradigm shift, and the soil and water, some of the soil and water resources and development studies. So let me discuss first why undertake research and development for soil and water resources. So soils for life. So this is a very important topic, soils for life. We know that soils is God's diverse creation, and we can look at it at Genesis 1:9 when the Lord says, "Let the dry land appear," and it was so. And in the International Union of Soil Science, there are over more than 100,000 different types of soil in the world. And in the book of Mr. Karating, the Philippines has more than 284 soil series. So we see that when God created the soils, it's really diverse. And in the same context, the soil use and management, we would see that in Genesis chapter 9, verse 20, when Noah began to be a man of the soil, he planted a vineyard. And in terms of soil fertility, we can look at it from Exodus 17:5. Then he took of the seed of the land and planted it in fertile soils. He placed it beside abundant water. So here in Ezekiel 17:5, we would see soil and water as basic for our production. So here we would see that men as stewards of God-given resource. So which means that all of us, God has meant that we are all stewards of this God-given resource. So what do experts said about soil? And let me present to you a Swiss entomologist, farmer, and development specialist. He was the first Swiss to receive the 1995 World Food Prize and the 2013 Right Livelihood Award. And what Dr. Hans Rudolf Heeren, winner of the 1995 World Food Prize, said, the first thing to do is to have a good soil. Even the best seeds can't do anything in sand and gravel. So even if we invest much on hybrid program, on developing the best seeds, if the soil aspect is ignored, then we cannot have good production, because he said the first thing to do is to have a good soil. And he shared his vision, and that is of a world with enough healthy food for all, produced by healthy people in a healthy environment. So isn't that pleasing, that healthy food for all, produced by healthy people in a healthy environment? So that is what we want, healthy bodies. Now, let us hear from a soil scientist, and that is from Ohio State University, soil scientist Ratan Lal. He said that it is a problem that soil and water issues have been taken for granted. And that is true. And it is a problem that is not going to be solved. It's going to get worse before it gets better. And This is a quotation that I would like each and everyone to take note of, and that is from a statement from a renowned political leader, and that is the 32nd U.S. President of the United States, former President Franklin Roosevelt. He says, "A nation that destroys its soil destroys itself." So we would see here the importance of everyone paying attention to our soil. As I pointed out earlier, each one is called to be a good steward of the soil and water resources. What about artists like Leonardo da Vinci? He said, "We know more about the movement of celestial bodies than about the soil underfoot." So these are some of the quotations that hopefully would encourage everyone to pay more interest about soil and water resources. Now, what's the status of our soil? At the global perspective, we have this global soil degradation. And from statistics that I took from FAO, it says that 33% of global soil is moderately to highly degraded. Why? Because of erosion, salinization, compaction, acidification, chemical pollution, and nutrient depletion. So in short, these are the threats to our soil. And these hamper soil functions and affecting food production. And in most countries, there is little opportunity for expansion of arable land. And that is true even in the Philippines. In terms of soil degradation, you would see here which parts of the world are very degraded, which are degraded and without vegetation. And you would see in the case of the Philippines, it's color red, so represented by very degraded soil. Now, we speak earlier of soil degradation. Soil degradation is a part of land degradation. And you see here in this slide pictures showing soil erosion, which is a dominant form of land degradation. And the land and the soil are under pressure to produce more to satisfy the increasing human needs. And we all know that because of our growing population. And this leads to land degradation, reduction or loss of economic and biological productivity. And you would see here on the screen some of the human-induced activities. You would see here steep sloping land being cultivated for agriculture, but to see how extensive soil erosion is. You would see here deforestation, the uphill and downhill cultivation which induces erosion, and the quarrying and mining affecting the downstream areas. And all of these are unsustainable land use and practices affecting good quality soil. We would see here on the screen farmers occupying vulnerable and high-risk areas. Upland farmers occupy and have access even in the so-called danger zones, as you would see here on the slide, meaning they are landslide-prone areas. So our population are migrating already to higher areas because in the lowland areas, we see that development has encroached even our good soils. Now, this slide tells you some of the topographic variations and problem soils. And this is way back in 1991 when the Bureau of Soils, the former director of Bureau of Soils, released this extent of problem soils in the country, those having steep slope, meaning greater than 30%, those with poor drainage, the coarse textured soils, the heavy cracking soils, those with severe fertility limitations, the saline soils, the acid sulfate soils, the pit soils, and even those affected by mine tailings and polluted lands. So we would see here that in terms of extent, those with severe fertility limitations are very extensive, and this is followed by areas with steep slopes. So the more that we should be careful in terms of the cultivation of these steep slopes. So what are the challenges? Soil degradation is evident in soil fertility decline. It has affected the soil biota and the quality of soil ecological services it provides. Land degradation has resulted to the decline in services that healthy lands provides, particularly for food and agriculture. And that is a statement from UNCCD in 2012. So we have soil and land degradation, a serious environmental problem that damages agricultural resource base and habitats of biodiversity resources above and below ground surface. So a very big challenge actually is the lack of appreciation on the value of soil ecological services. What does that mean? Meaning that we are focused on the use value and we ignore the non-use value. And this affects policy decisions. Also, water degradation has emerged to be an equally important concern. And also, another challenge is on issue of biodiversity loss and changing climate. So, as I was pointing out earlier on, it's really the lack of appreciation that really is the concern. And so here on your screen is the concept of soil ecological ecosystem services. You would see here that there are 4 soil ecosystem services, and that the foremost which is recognized is on provisioning, which means that it is a source of our food, the biomass, the fuel, the fresh water, and natural medicines. And the 3 others, the regulating, which means that the soil has services in terms of promoting a better air quality, affecting climate, water runoff, erosion, natural hazards, and pollination. These are considered regulating services of the soil. And the supporting services, these are nutrient cycling, water cycling, soil formation, and photosynthesis. And cultural, of course, this relates to ethical values, systems values, recreation, and ecotourism. And the focus really is mainly on provisioning, as we have seen from our past and even existing focus, hindi lang on research and development, but on investments. Now, why is it that it is often ignored? You would see here on your screen that it is the direct use value which is given focus, and we ignore the indirect use value, which means resources used indirectly, and that is regulating services like flood prevention, water purification. More recently, we see areas which are formerly not flooded, now flooded because of conversion, because the natural catchment, the ponds, the irrigated areas, they are already converted, and therefore water finds its ways. And so we experience more of floods in areas not previously flooded. Another is on option value, and that is our future possible use, all services, including supporting services. And there's also that bequest value, the future generations possible use, and the existence value, the right of existence. So you would see here on your screen that our focus is more on the used value, and we neglect the non-used value. Altogether, the used value and the non-used values constitute the total economic value. So there is a need for us to value not just their direct use, but also the non-use and the indirect use, which are not part of the equation. So what are the ecosystem services? So in this slide, you would see that we need to unlock the secrets in the soil. So more often, what's underneath is not known. Just as what Debensi has said, we know more about the movement of celestial bodies than about the soil underfoot. So we see here the need to really pursue more on not just on the surface, but underneath what is in the soil. After all, Healthy soil has amazing water retention capacity, and this is important because healthy soil is key to feeding 9 billion population by 2050, and that is based on the estimate of USDA. So here is a more detailed representation of soil ecological services. So what you see on screen are those with the stars. So these are what often are considered, but those without these stars, they are often not given value. So there's really a need to give emphasis on the use and non-use value to really have a better appreciation of the soil ecological services. And as I pointed out earlier, it's more of the above ground and less of the of those beneath that are known to us. And soil is a habitat. Soil hosts a quarter of our planet's biodiversity. And from this slide, you will see that soil is alive. There are so much in it. Living in the soil are plant roots, bacteria, fungi, protozoa, algae, mites, nematodes, worms, ants, maggots, insects, and grubs, and larger animals. And they form part of what we have in our soil. Can you just imagine without these organisms, our world would be plenty of mountains of garbage without them. And that is something that we don't give value to. And it is important for the food web. You would see here the relationship. When these diverse soil organisms interact with one another and with the plants and animals in the ecosystem, they form a complex web of ecological activity. So removing one from the food web would mean we are disturbing and putting pressure in our soil to provide the soil ecological services. So that clearing forested land or grassland for cultivation affects the soil environment and drastically reduces the number and species of soil organisms. Similarly, the overuse or misuse of agrochemicals has resulted in environmental degradation, particularly in soil and water resources. Agricultural systems and agroecological practices such as agroecology, agroforestry, conservation agriculture, organic farming, and zero-tillage can sustainably increase farm productivity without degrading the soil and water resources. So this slide tells us that soil is a non-renewable resource. And so the more that we should take care of it, because it is our basis for food, for feed, for medicine, ecosystem services, and fuel. And really, we have a big challenge on this because of the growing population that we have, the more that we need to produce more for the growing population. So that soils are under pressure of intensification and competing uses of forestry, cropping, pasture, and urbanization. Okay, so that's part one of the presentation. Now let me move on to part two, which is on R&D direction, challenges in soil science and technology. Let me point it from the global, from the regional, and national perspectives. So from the global lens, we have the Global Soil Partnership, and also I have included concerns of the International Union of Soil Sciences. On the regional lens, I am presenting here some of the ASEAN Soil Partnership concerns. And on the national perspective, we have national commitments and we have the soils of the Philippines. As I was pointing out earlier, let us see it from this initiative on the Global Soil Partnership. and this was initiated by FAO, and they have this intergovernmental technical panel on soils consisting of 27 topsoil experts from different countries. And so with this formation of intergovernmental technical panel on soil, we have in 2014, we have the first celebrated the World Soil Day, and the theme at that time is that soils have been neglected for too long. So World Soil Day, and that is experienced, we celebrate it every December 5. And then in 2015, we have the International Year of Soils, that is Healthy Soils for Healthy Life. And there was a launching of the status of the World Soil Resources Report. So these are initiatives that give attention to concern to our soil resources. And do you know that we have a World Soil Charter? Anyone? Yeah, way back in 1981, there is that World Soil Charter. And in 2015, there has been a revised World Soil Charter. So ilang dekada po yan bago napalitan yung ating World Soil Charter. And what struck me most in this revised World Soil Charter, of which we are committed because we are a party to this to the UN. So it says here one principle, which is on sustainable management. Soil management here is defined. Soil management is sustainable if the supporting, provisioning, regulating, and cultural services provided by soil are maintained or enhanced without significantly impairing the soil functions that enable those services. This is important, and I would like to give emphasis on this one because we would like a sustainable soil management, but the condition for soil management to be sustainable is looking back into the previous discussion. It is important that the soil ecological services are provided by the soil, and these are maintained or enhanced without significantly impairing the soil functions, which means if we do not satisfy this condition, that means it is so the balance between the supporting and provisioning services for plant production and the regulating services the soil provides for water quality and availability and for atmospheric greenhouse gas composition is a particular concern. So this definition should now give us a more concern on how we manage our soil. And when do we say that soil management is sustainable? That's why with this revised World Soil Charter, we have one technical discussions wherein I presented the challenges in the Philippines, and so as the revised World Soil Charter is concerned. Now, the initiative of the Global Soil Partnership with the International Technical Panel on Soils, they come up with five pillars of action. First is on soil management, and that is to promote sustainable management of soil resources for soil protection, conservation, and sustainable productivity, which this is something that we all look into. And then awareness, that is encourage investment, technical cooperation, policy, education awareness, and extension in soil. I'm glad that we have 31 state universities and colleges here. And I know that extension is one of your concerns, not just research and development. The third, of course, is on research, that is to promote targeted soil research and development, focusing on identified gaps and priorities and synergies with related productive environmental and social development actions. The fourth pillar of action is on information and data, and that is to enhance the quantity and the quality of soil data and information, data collection, analysis, validation, reporting, monitoring, integration with other disciplines. That means information and data in one country would be comparable or can be compared with other countries. That is, they are making harmonization insofar as information and data, particularly maps, are concerned. The fifth pillar is on standards, harmonization of methods, measurements, and indicators for the sustainable management and protection of soil resources. In this particular pillar, the laboratory, which analyzes our soil, methods are harmonized, and they are methods are prescribed so that when we speak of particular parameter, they are comparable among countries. Now, the Global Soil Partnership has come up with quite a number of resource materials, and they come up with the voluntary guidelines for sustainable soil management. Not only that, they have recently released the International Code of Conduct for the Sustainable Use and Management of Fertilizers, and there's already the protocol for the assessment of sustainable soil management. I would encourage you to visit the link shown below that is on the Global Soil Partnership. The link, so you would, in case you would want to download these resources, they are available at the website. So still from the global lens, this is the research and development challenge. Really, the challenge is for healthy soil, for healthy life. So you would see here that where food begins, we have to assess the soil resources within the framework of ecosystem services. So that means not just from the perspective of provisioning, but including the three other soil ecological services. And healthy soil is key to food security and nutrition for all. 95% of our food comes from our soil. So that's how important it is for each one of us. So which means when we have our soil health assessment, it's not just the physical and chemical, which is traditionally being done. Now we have to consider the biological diversity and of course the use of organic amendments. Additionally, we have to evaluate the threats to soil functions and the impacts on soil and ecological services. So you would see here on your screen the different services that the soil provides, and this is now the time to make evaluation of the soil ecological services. Meaning tools being used in one country should be the same with the other so that we can compare, at least within the ASEAN region or within the country. And fourth is on the development of soil databases, digital mapping, and soil resources assessment tools. So these are the concerns and so far as research and development from the global perspective. Not only that, saving our soils require collective efforts. And that would mean not just targeted soil research, but we need also policies and governance. We need effective education and extension programs, and that is important for giving value to our soil and water resources. And then we have to encourage investment to sustain soil management. And there has to be efforts to stop soil degradation and restoring degraded soils. And of course, soil information systems would be a key tool so that would be the basis for our actions. And R&D, of course, has to focus on this as it relates to sustainable soil management. That is increasing soil organic matter content, keeping soil surface vegetated, using nutrients wisely, promoting crop rotations, and reducing erosion. So what you see on screen are the important concerns towards sustainable soil management, which should be the concern for our research and development. Now, aside from the Global Soil Partnership, there are some initiatives on the global soil biodiversity, and this was launched in 2011. So it's been 10 years already, and what remains in terms of challenges to research and development would be the compilation of soil biodiversity database, meaning the soil fauna and flora, soil biodiversity data in terms of taxonomy, phylogeny, and function, Global Soil Biodiversity Assessment and Atlas. And these are also topics that we need the researchers to pursue soil protest initiative and soil metagenomics. So in this slide, you would see that the FAO has released already the Global Soil Biodiversity Atlas. And some regions, like in Europe, they have the European Atlas of Soil Biodiversity. In the Philippines, we do not have a Philippine soil biodiversity yet, so that this remains as a gap for us. But there are some micro researches that would serve as some baseline insofar as soil biodiversity is concerned, but that is yet to be completed. So what about soil protest initiative? This is a more basic research that needs to be done. And so we encourage universities and colleges, if you have students, encourage them to do some studies relative to this one. And also on soil metagenomics, these are very challenging topics. That means molecular approach in assessing bacterial diversity based on the analysis of the total DNA isolated from environmental samples. And this is in 2016, they have this symposium on soil metagenomics. So I just don't know kung from among our institutions represented here have some studies related to soil metagenomics. Another initiative is from the IPOC, that is the International Federation of Organic Agriculture movement. They advocate for healthy soil, plants, animals, and humans to come up with a healthy planet. This fosters international collaboration in organic agricultural research. Another, from the global perspective, we also see from the International Union of Soil Sciences, and in 2018, they have had this World Congress of Soil Science, and from the 21st World Congress, they pointed out that soil is one of the most complicated biological materials on our planet. See how complex it is in terms of biological materials. So it's really a big challenge for us. And soil stores 10% of the world's carbon dioxide emission. Soil carbon is the largest terrestrial pool of carbon, and that 5 tons of animal life can live in 1 hectare of soil. So ganun po kadami. Now, these are some of the areas of concern if we would like to pursue some researches, and that is on acid sulfate soils, cryosols, digital soil mapping, digital soil morphometrics, forest soils, global soil chains, heritage soils, hydropedology, and international actions for the sustainable use of soils. So ito po yung mga working groups from the International Union of Soil Science. So these are the concerns of this. There are different groups working on these different areas. So medyo mahaba ang listahan po natin. So we also have land degradation, modeling of soil and landscape evolution, body soils, proximal soil sensing, soil affected soils, soil monitoring, soil information standards, soils of urban, industrial, traffic, mining, and military areas. And then the universal soil classification, and then the world reference base. Now let me move on from the global to the regional perspective. So FAO initiated this in 2012, and there was a launching in China of this Asia Soil Science Network and Global Soil Map. And the Philippines is represented during this time, and After that came some consultation workshop, uh, and then the ASEAN economic integration, and what are the challenges in research and development and so far as the regional concern. Developing research skills and infrastructure, increasing investments in R&D, and that is true even in the Philippines. Sustainable soil management to reduce production cost, soil quality, that means relative to soil pollution and crop quality, particularly for food safety, and considering as carbon sink through sustainable land management. And also a concern is on the sustainable intensification through improved efficiency of soil and water resources, utilization, and management. In the ASEAN Soil Partnership, just as it is in the Global Soil Partnership, we have mirrored the 5 pillars in the Global Soil Partnership in the ASEAN Soil Partnership. And let me convey to you that as of June 4, 2021, the chair of the chair for the ASEAN Soil Partnership is now the Philippines, with the BSWM leading this ASEAN Soil Partnership. Previously, it was Thailand who chaired the ASEAN Soil Partnership. And there are 5 pillars. Pillar 1, which is sustainable soil management, is represented by China. Pillar 2 by Pakistan. And for research, which is Pillar 3, vacant pa po yun. And then Pillar 4, which is on data and information, is Bangladesh. And we are honored that for Pillar 5, our very own Dr. Gina Nilo is chairing this Pillar 5, and that is on harmonization of data, more particularly among soil laboratories. Within the ASEAN region, there's that regional implementation plan for the ASEAN Soil Partnership that was released in December 2016. This provides us a glimpse of the focus or the target and so far as research and development is also a concern. For the ASEAN Soil Partnership R&D program, the regional soil R&D program can be oriented to solve practical issues of soil degradation and soil management, in particular soil erosion, loss of soil organic carbon, soil salinity, alkalinity, nutrient imbalance, soil pollution, soil sealing, and then soil acidification and compaction. And research should provide support in strengthening the soil buffering capacity and resilience against variable climatic conditions. In all cases, soil research in the ASEAN region should focus on soil degradation and on-site and off-site, which is often neglected, the economic loss to current and future generations. And in the implementation plan, the intent is to establish the Center of Excellence for Soil Research in Asia, known as CESRA, and this is based currently in Thailand. And the intent really is to promote R&D activities based on identified priorities at the national level, and to launch collaborative and interdisciplinary R&D projects and initiatives. While this is the aim, funding is one of the concerns. So from the regional, we move to the national initiative. So we have a parallel partnership, and thus we launched in December 5, 2018. So we have the Philippine Soil Partnership, the purpose of which is to implement the 5 pillars of action aligned to the activities indicated in the ASEAN Soil Partnership Regional Implementation Plan and Work Plan of Center of Excellence for Soil Research in Asia. So specifically, the Philippine Soil Partnership is meant to strengthen collaboration with other national and subnational government agencies, research and development institutions, academia, private sector, civil society organizations, international donor agencies. So that in this webinar, we are pleased that we have academic institutions, the private group, private sector, as well as from the government agencies and LGUs. So collaboration and partnership is very much welcome. And the second is to increase awareness on the importance of the soil ecosystem services. and it is also the intent to update the database and the list of R&D institutions working on management of soil resources for agriculture, including the list of completed and ongoing projects. And additionally, to advocate for a national soil legislation that will translate or localize the revised World Soil Charter and the voluntary guidelines in sustainable soil management. And of course, to spearhead the nationwide celebration of World Soil Day and coordinate with policymakers for celebration of the National Soil Day. So what is the international commitment of the Philippines? So BSWM serve as member to the Global Soil Partnership and to the ASEAN Soil Partnership, which I pointed out earlier. The chair in the ASEAN Soil Partnership is the Philippines, and they are launching with the launching of the Philippine Soil Partnership. It is being chaired by BSWM, with the Pillar 5 being chaired for the ASEAN Soil Partnership by BSWM as well. Aside from that, we also have this commitment to the United Nations Convention to combat desertification, and we have this World Overview of Conservation Approaches and Technologies, or WOCAT, wherein the chair is the PhilCat. So may parallel body tayo, the PhilCat, which is the counterpart for the World Overview of Conservation Approaches and Technologies. So we move now to the third topic, which is on which is about BSWM, the role, the paradigm shift, and the soil and water R&D studies. So I will just be presenting here some of the soil and water R&D studies. But meanwhile, may I request our host to share with us the ABP of the BSWM?
Before man came, soil and water existed. Each grain tells a story. Each drop essential. No soil properties are alike. Water resources is abundant, both of great value. Soil and water is basic to agriculture. The Bureau of Soils was created under Republic Act No. 622. It was then reorganized through Executive Order 116 in January 1987, renaming it as the Bureau of Soils and Water Management. Anchored in its mandate to formulate measures and guidelines for the effective utilization of soil and water resources as vital agricultural resources to attain food security and safety, environmental stability through soil and water resources-based adaptation and mitigation measures that address multi-environmental concerns on land degradation, climate change, and agricultural biodiversity conservation. The rationalized Bureau of Soils and Water Management is the nationally mandated authority on soils and water management for agriculture. Its vision is to sustain the management of soil and water resources for agricultural production systems that are in harmony with nature, where food is health safe and food resource production is economically viable and socially acceptable. With a mission to establish a technology and policy environment that will ensure the attainment of vibrant rural areas characterized by sustainable agriculture and fishery productivity, and institutionalize the judicious use of the base soil and water resources of the country. The pursuit of research and development for soil and water technologies is the BSWM's core function. The following is our rationalized core functions. Provide continuing assessment of the sustainability of the country's agricultural production systems, particularly soils and water, as vital agricultural resources. Sustain Philippine agriculture through the promotion of sustainable agricultural land management practices in the croplands, as well as the marginal uplands, hilly lands, and highlands. Formulate, through a participatory process, a national R&D agenda on sustainable agricultural land management and provision of leadership in the development and operation of a network of institutions on soil and water resources R&D. Strengthen the convergence efforts of concerned agencies on sustainable rural development to include climate change, land degradation, and biodiversity concerns. Render assistance and advice on policy matters related to the mitigation of the effects of extreme climate events on agricultural lands, design and develop rainwater harvesting, and other water-related small-scale infrastructures, and formulate recommendations on wastewater use and reuse. Engage in rainmaking projects for agricultural areas and watersheds to address the problems of prolonged droughts and minimize their effects to standing agricultural crops. Recommend appropriate soil and water management policies to address issues on food security, environment, biodiversity, and climate change, including vulnerability disaster risk assessment relative to agriculture, and provision of technical support services to the academe and private organizations, among others, through the conduct of laboratory analysis on soils, water, and plant tissue. The BSWM is committed to toil, labor, be climate change responsive, and take the challenges towards achieving the Department of Agriculture's mission of making food available and affordable to every Filipino family.
Some chemistry-related activities in the laboratory. Then we have specialized or targeted soil R&D, and that concerns environmental, health, and safety. So we have some specific topics here like problem soils, soil and water degradation and conservation, organic agriculture, nutrient management, that is considering both macro and micronutrients, and soils and the changing climate. On the landscape and the resource management, you would see here from the lowland to the hilly land to the highland and mountain areas. So we have here the recommendation domain of the BSWM. So, and that is for an integrated soil and water management. On the lowland, the upland ecological zone, that means a slope less than 18% and the elevation of less than 500 meters above sea level. And that is what is within the ecological zone of lowland upland soils. Then moving on, those which are greater than 18% in slope and more than 500 in terms meters above sea level in terms of elevation, these are considered the hilly land ecological zone. And we have the center here, the National Soil and Water Resources Research and Development Center, for the hilly land ecological zone located in Tanay Rizal, while for the lowland upland, it is located in San Ildefonso, Bulacan. And moving further, we have the highland ecological zone, wherein these are areas with elevation of more than 500 meters above sea level. And that is represented by our center for highland ecological zone located in Malaybalay, Bukidnon. And further up, these are already the public areas. These are areas that really have to be preserved. So along the landscape, we see various land uses from the coastal plain to the lowland, upland, to the hilly and highland. We see various uses. And the BSWM, as we pursue our research and development, our recommendation domain is for the lowland, upland, the hilly land, and the highland, as represented by our 3 National Soil and Water Resources Research and Development Center. Now, in the case of our lowland, upland ecological zone, we have a research facility there we call SOLTA. During the JICA assistance, this was developed, and the different kinds of soils are represented here. This came from different parts of the country. So in this particular soil tank, we can compare the performance of different crops as they are planted in different types of soil and within the same climatic condition in Bulacan. And then at the Hilly Land Center in Tanay, we have the conservation farming, which I often referred to as Reading Museum, because when it started in 1969, you wouldn't see the terraces that is now beautifully presented here on your slide. But to see that after decades, it has become slopes, like the terraces that you see in the northern part of the country. And we also have land degradation assessment for the erosion plots. And we have other technodemo represented here in the hilly land ecological zone. Now, in terms of research and development, I would also like to invite you that in our country, we have this National Soil and Water Resources Research and Development and Extension Agenda. We have had first in October 2011 to 2016, and then we have updated it to October 2017 to 2022, which means that this next year we have to be formulating our agenda covering 2023 to 2029. So this agenda serves as the basis for the prioritizing of soil and water resources research and development. If you would be asking funding support from the Department of Agriculture, in particular the Bureau of Agricultural Research, this is one of the reference for prioritizing investments on soil and water resources.
Recording in progress.
Now, what other documents would guide us in terms of soil and water resources research and development? So, as I pointed out earlier, we would be starting next year. We would be crafting the next 7 years of our agenda to cover our priorities for the next 6-year period. And the document will address major soil constraints. We review from this agenda whether we have addressed already the major concerns. Should there be a need to address the same concerns, then we have to do and consider what else should be included as agenda, as part of the agenda in the next 6 years. We also have the National Master Plan for Small-Scale Irrigation Projects. This was formulated in 2013 rather, and took over until 2022, and so updating would have to be done as well. And that is the basis for funding support to the DA regional field offices insofar as development of small-scale irrigation systems are concerned. The master plan provide guidelines in direction in prioritizing projects for irrigation development. I understand that in the last webinar, your topic is about irrigation. So there's a distinction between the scope of the NIA from the BSWM as we are engaged in small-scale irrigation systems. And we should not forget the watersheds, even in small irrigation systems, because they are important to the sustainability of the system. And so the master plan for SSIP provide an estimate of irrigation investment requirements in rice, corn, and high-value production areas for the covered period. Another reference on soil and water resources research and development would be the aligned Philippine National Action Plan to combat desertification, land degradation, and drought. And this would be until 2025. And the main focus here is to prevent land degradation and mitigate the impacts of drought. This is actually part of our commitment to the United Nations Convention to combat desertification. And we do appreciate that to come up with this aligned Philippine National Action Plan, we gain support from other departments, in particular from the DNR, from BOSP, from DAR. So there are 4 departments that join together in the formulation of the aligned Philippine National Action Plan to combat desertification, land degradation, and drought. Now, we move on to research for development. In the previous programs that we have had, we traditionally our focus is on productivity, right? And then it has shifted to consider sustainability. And of course, we need partnership to be able to sustain the productivity of our basic resources. And on the productivity side, it concerns fertility and sustainability, both considering supply and demand. But when we speak of sustainability, that would mean judicious use and management of soils and water. And so when we conduct research for development, it's not just for productivity or for economic gain that we consider, but more importantly, we consider the resource base, and that would mean considering environmental concerns. And for partnership, of course, we have to consider information sharing and linkages. And that is research for development. Now, there's a need for paradigm shift. We have to consider sustainable habitat for agriculture and agri-based livelihood. Why? Soil and water resources, these are actually habitat of above ground commodities and below ground organisms we call soil biota, and this sustain production within rational utilization. And this provides interconnectivity of food security, nutrition, environment, and climate change. There's a need for intersectoral partnership for combating land degradation, climate change, adaptation, and biodiversity enhancement. That would mean also area-based food security is anchored in sustainable habitat to provide for agriculture and agro-based livelihood. And research and development, including extension, should directly contribute towards sustainability of habitat for agriculture. And it should contribute to agri-based livelihood that provides the value chain. So this is the strategic framework for the soil and water resources research and development and extension agenda and intersectoral partnership for climate change adaptation and biodiversity. And this you would see in the agenda that was crafted 2017 to 2022. The challenge or issue was the declining quality of agricultural land. So as pointed out in the first of this webinar, we have the land degradation, and we have to consider area-based food security. So our resources spatially have different qualities. So we have to consider the spatial concern. Where are they located? And that is for sustainable habitat, for agriculture and agri-based livelihood. So to address this concern, we have to have a soil carbon stock development. That means we have to assess, and then we have to consider surface and shallow groundwater development, and this and also consider soil health improvement and management, long-term monitoring, data warehousing, and water resources development and management. And this is, you would see on the other side is the commodity-based R&D, and that is what the Department of Agriculture is releasing, the RDF, which is being published by the Bureau of Agricultural Research. So in tandem with the commodity-based R&D, we have the soil and water resources research and development and expansion agenda. Now, in the case of the BSWM, this is our roadmap towards sustainable habitat for agriculture and agri-based livelihood. So from 2017 to 2022, our roadmap concerns soil fertility mapping and monitoring, soil and land degradation, evaluation of soil carbon stock and monitoring, surface and groundwater development, including salinity assessment, soil biodiversity assessment for soil health improvement and management, updating of the network of protected areas for agriculture and development, and the SAFDC, integration into the comprehensive land use plan, and then the updating of the Philippine soil and land resources information. So I would be discussing this in a while. First is on the national soil sampling and testing. It's no less than our president who provided us a marching order to prepare color-coded agricultural guide maps. And we have completed it for the major rice-producing provinces of the country. And also we have done it already for corn. And this provides the basis for the recommendation on what, on the amount fertilizer that we have to use, that is for the rational or judicious use of our soil resources. So in the map, we would see areas suitable for different crops, like for rice, for corn, and even other maps. We have also for coffee and cacao, and but this have to be completed for the entire country. So these are the example of maps that produced out of that national soil sampling and testing. So we have soil fertility maps, fertilizer guide maps, and suitability is specific to the crop, like for rice and corn, and they are at scale of 1:50,000 on a provincial scale. And then we have the review of the network of protected areas for agriculture and agro-industrial development and the strategic agriculture and fisheries development zone. This was earlier identified, but we have now to review it considering previous implementation. And we are guided by Republic Act 8435 or the AFMA in terms of the delineated network of protected areas for agriculture and agro-industrial development. And also the NAPAAD, as we call it, is the technically defined prime agricultural lands. And the SAFDC Of course, coming from the NAPAAD are prime agricultural lands that are actively used for agricultural and fishery production, and or host support facilities are available and strategically located to warrant full modernization of agriculture. So for the entire country, that covers 81 provinces with a total of 1,617 municipalities. So the maps especially account for the remaining suitable areas for agriculture, livestock, and fishery development. And the maps are actually decision tool for agriculture and fishery projects, land use and development planning. Another national scope activity is on national mapping, characterization, and development of spatial database for the coastal areas affected by salinity. So in previous years, we have had a study on soil salinity in 3 areas of the country, and that is in Cagayan, in Bicol, and in somewhere in Mindanao. But that is funded by FAO, and after decades, we go back to the same sites and determine the salinity, and that was funded in 2017 by BA in 3 coastal provinces, and we expanded the scope to cover the remaining 42 coastal provinces, and this time it was funded by BBM. So it covers now 21 provinces of Luzon, 11 provinces in Visayas, and 10 provinces in Mindanao. And since we have all experienced this pandemic, we are affected by the field activities in this particular project on salinity. Now, in the earlier slides that I've shown you, soil erosion is a concern, and our concern is on land degradation. So what would be the solution today and in the future would be the sustainable land management, which here is defined as the use of land and water resources, including soils, water, animals, and plants for the production of goods to meet changing human needs, while simultaneously ensuring the long-term productive potential of these resources and the maintenance of their environmental functions. And so that is based from the definition of OCAT released in 2008. So you see here in your slides the different technologies that can be promoted so far as to pursue sustainable land management. And the BSWM has, through the funding support of BA-BAR, has come up with the development of these decision support tools as key to address abiotic stresses in areas vulnerable to climate change. So in this, from the website, you would see 34 technologies and 9 approaches on sustainable land management. And this was generated through the adoption of the World Overview of Conservation Approaches and Technologies. So moving on to address soil erosion, we have this sustainable corn production sloping areas, also known as COPSA. And this is considering that most of the areas are sloping and covered with corn, so the area are meant, and they covered areas, sloping areas planted to corn. So the beneficiaries are corn farmers cultivating in sloping areas. Through the project of, they come up with the documentation of SLM practices, and these are compiled, and IEC materials were also produced as to support and help our extension workers, and also our farmers on what technologies and practices would be best to pursue sustainable land management. So here are the guidelines on the promotion and implementation of sustainable corn production, sloping areas. So moving on, I would, in this particular part of the presentation, I will not be presenting all of the current research and development studies, but I opted to select the major ones as considering the viewers that we have this afternoon. So one important research that I would like to share with you is about the improving nutrient use efficiency towards precision agriculture to enhance soil and water resources research. So this project has actually 5 component studies. One is on the multi-location trials for improving the nutrient use efficiency of yellow corn in different landscape. Why multi-location trials? Because we have had an earlier study funded by the STP card, and that is for the nutrient nitrogen use efficiency of yellow corn as we do a calibration study in Cagayan and Isabela. Also, the project component 2, which is on validation trial for improving the nutrient use efficiency of Adlai. Why validation trial? Because we already have a partnership with the Philippine Nuclear Research Institute on the study of Adlai that is also using N15. And then for component 3, we have 3 studies here for calibration studies, and that is covering white corn, and then also cassava and vegetables, in particular eggplant and tomato. All these studies used M15 as the tracer technique. You would see in the slide here the uptake of the plant. From the study, the plant is able to, we are able to distinguish whether the nitrogen uptake comes from the applied fertilizer or from the soil, or what is inherent from the soil. So that here is a direct measurement using N15, a direct measurement of plant uptake of for nitrogen. So we are able to determine the nitrogen fertilizer use efficiency. So why is it important? Because this topic on nitrogen fertilizer use efficiency is actually input to sustainable nitrogen management. In the conventional study that we have, we do the crop response approach. But in this particular study, it's measured considering the use of isotope, stable isotope, and that is N15. So we have here a better result to determine really what how much of the applied inorganic fertilizer were taken by the plant, and those that remain and went to the environment. Sustainable nitrogen management is a concern, and this is part of the Colombo Declaration, and the Philippines is a party to this discussion. Another study is in the assessment of salinity and its impact to coastal agriculture and communities in the Philippines. Component 1 is as earlier presented, and this is for component 2, which is saline soil microbial community assessment toward improving coastal agriculture. And in here, we opted to do laboratory outsourcing for the DNA sequencing and microbial profiling of soil samples with the Philippine Genome Center. We hope to finish this study by the end of the year to serve as a baseline for soil samples that we have in some parts of the country. On organic agriculture program, One study that deals on soil ecological services, we have this enhancing soil ecosystem services through the use of cover crops and green manure and organic production systems. This is actually a new project, and we are starting with the Arachis pentoi in the use of these cover crops to enhance soil ecosystem services. This project is being done in the three centers in Bulacan, in Rizal, and in Bukidnon. Still under the organic agriculture program, we have the soil health assessment and microbial community analysis in organic, low external input, and conventional rice and vegetable production systems project. In this particular project, we partner with the Benguet State U and in Nueva Ecija, we have the CLSU as partner in this particular project. For rice, it's CLSU, and for vegetable, it's the Benguet State U. We hope to complete this study by the end of the year. We also have the study on the assessment of biochar derived from different agricultural residues on physical properties and CEC of Angeles series. This is also quite a new study to address concerns related to physical properties. And this makes use of biochar from agricultural waste. And we have a long-term research on the influence of vermicompost application on yield and quality of selected vegetables in 3 ecological zones. So these are located, the long-term researches are located in Bulacan, in Rizal, and in Bukidnon. And these areas, they represent the lowland upland ecological zone, the hilly land, and the highland ecological zone. So these, they have different vegetables in this long-term research. We also have a collaborative project with BAR, and that is on related to the performance and impact valuation of renewable energy-driven pumps, particularly solar, wind, and ramp pumps in Mindanao. And the team is currently in Davao doing an inventory of these renewable energy-driven pumps and identifying study areas for the measurement of some parameters. It actually started when we did the phase 1 that covers region 1, 2, and 3 for solar, wind, and ramp pump. And the project was expanded to cover the other regions of Luzon and then Visayas. And so we are now in phase 3 to cover the regions in Mindanao, and that is excluding the barn. But this performance assessment covers the renewable energy pumps as they are used for high-value commercial crops. So given the 3 topics, subtopics that I presented earlier on, I would like to end the presentation with the call for action. And that is specifically as it relates to Pillar 2, and this concerns the technical cooperation, the awareness concern, and the investments, as well as on extension and soil education. So as participants, you are part of those called by God to be stewards, and you are part of this call for action. So what are needed from us? So it's been long that the National Land Use Act is being discussed, and we need the passage of the National Land Use Policy. So it's been more than 3 decades already. Why is there a need to pursue? Because in the World Soil Charter and in 1981, it says for the guidelines for action by the government is to develop a policy for wise land use accounting to land suitability for different types of utilization and the needs of the country, and also to incorporate principles of rational land use and management and conservation of soil resources into appropriate resource legislation. So it's now embodied in the revised World Soil Charter released in 2015. Also, there's a call for action for government support to multi-level interdisciplinary educational and capacity building initiatives to promote the stewardship of every Filipino as land users for sustainable soil management. So that I am pleased that we have quite a number of participants from government agencies as well as from the LGUs, and this is what is requested from us. The guidelines for action requires individuals and the private sector as well. So we are pleased that we have viewers from private organizations. It says from the revised World Soil Charter that all individuals using or managing soil must act as stewards of the soil to ensure that this essential natural resource is managed sustainably to safeguard it for future generations. And the third call for action is the review and update the soil education curriculum for preschool to tertiary education, including vocational trainings and extension programs. So I'm pleased that our viewers, mainly from the state colleges and universities. So, and also we have representative from TESDA and from BOST SEI and also from DepEd. I heard we also have a representative from DepEd. So there's a need to review and update the soil education curriculum. We have tried to review the preschool to elementary curriculum. I did it in partnership with the Department of Education, Bureau of Curriculum, and indeed there are a lot of things to do so far as enhancing our curriculum is concerned. And so I would like also to share the challenge to our tertiary education, including our vocational and also for trainings and extension programs. You have heard quite a lot from me hearing the soil ecological services and the definition of sustainable soil management. So, and the assessment, and there's already the protocol for the assessment of sustainable soil management. All these are necessary as we review and update the soil education curriculum, the existing soil education curriculum. And so the guideline for action from the government as embodied in the World Soil Charter 1981 is to implement education, training, and extension programs at all levels in soil management and conservation. So coming from from agricultural schools, state colleges and universities, I just don't know how many students are pursuing or specializing in soils. So kukonting species na lang po ang mga nagmi-major sa soils. But nonetheless, what is important is we review our soil education curriculum starting from the preschool hanggang sa tertiary level, including our vocational and even training and extension programs, and align it with what we have presented to you this afternoon. So another call for action is the active engagement of local government administrations as frontliners in the protection of the soil environment. So to our LGU participants, the challenge is on your side to become frontliners in the protection of the soil environment. And that is provided in the World Soil Charter in 1981 that states that we should establish links between local government administrations and land users for the implementation of the soils policy and emphasize the need to put proven soil conservation techniques into practice and to integrate appropriate measures in forestry and agriculture for the protection of the environment. So, okay po ba ang challenge natin sa mga LGUs to become frontliners in the protection of the soil environment? So, kailangan niyo po ng policy along that line, local policy, and also strict implementation. The fifth call for action is nationwide advocacy and awareness campaign of public and private sectors with massive scientific and media support. Kaya sa mga private viewers po natin, so this is also a challenge to you. We at BSWM had submitted a proposal, and we are awaiting for approval from the Office of the President. We are advocating for a presidential proclamation whereby Philippine celebration of World Soil Day would be every December 5 of every year, and we need funds for this celebration, and that is through the Philippine Soil Partnership. So we've been participating in the celebration of World Soil Day since 2014, but there's no specific fund allocated to it, and so it becomes really a challenge for us to pursue a nationwide campaign to create awareness, advocacy for sustainable soil management. And of course, the sixth call for action, this is to sustain participation in the Global Soil Partnership, ASEAN Soil Partnership, and the Philippine Soil Partnership in terms of conferences and plenary assembly, and this is every June of every year. But for the year 2021, the plenary assembly would be scheduled in September. That is the 9th plenary assembly of the Global Soil Partnership. So, advocacy for wider engagement of multi-stakeholders. So, really what we are most awaiting for is the approval from Malacanang for presidential proclamation that we would be celebrating Philippine celebration of World Soil Day every December 5. And we look forward that it's not just the BSWM, but other partners, a wider participation. We appreciate those who have joined us and participated in the previous celebration. They posted the tarpaulin. They joined us in the celebration. So we are looking forward to wider participation as we all have part in contributing to sustainable soil management. And along this line, we hope that the launching and the publication of the National Soil Conservation Roadmap would be done this December 5, 2021. And that is the guideline for action by the government is to promote sustainable soil management that is relevant to the range of soils present and the needs of the country, as I pointed out earlier on, and to incorporate the principles and practices of sustainable soil management into policy guidance and legislation at all levels of government, ideally leading to the development of a national soil policy. So there were efforts in the past to have the Soil Conservation Act, pero hanggang ngayon po ay hindi pa rin nagpa-prosper. So, saving our soils require our collective efforts. So we do hope that all viewers that we have today with our webinars, we are counting on you to become a partner, as we all have a role to play in sustaining our soil resources and of course our water resources, as these are vital resources for food production. And we have seen from the presentations that it's not just for production of food, but there are a wide range of services that the soil provides, and so this should be our concern that we invest in sustainable soil, land, and water management. We have a role to stop soil, land, and water degradation and restore degraded soils, land, and water bodies. So some of our viewers can pursue targeted soil research, and our LGUs and can also pursue policies, local policies on soil governance. More importantly, we also engage the not just the academe, but also the private sector for effective education extension programs. So all these required integrated and multi-sectoral and area-based approaches and partnerships, not just of one convention, but 3 UN conventions, the UNCBD, UNCCD, and UNCCF, and other international bodies for effective global, regional, and national implementation. So with this last slide, I would like to invite you, should you have some questions and clarifications, you might want to contact us at this address on your screen, and the telefax and email and the web page and the Facebook page as shown on your screen. So with that, thank you so much, and good afternoon, everyone.
The value of soil. Soil is wonderful. Well, of course, we live on it. And if it is fertile, it can produce marvelous things. Fertile soil puts food on our plate, but the number of plates is growing, and more meat ends up on these plates. And part of what we previously put on our plates, we now put into our petrol tanks. This again requires more fertile soil. Productive land is becoming scarce. In 1960, there was still almost half a hectare of farmland for every person on Earth. In 2020, there will be only around a third of that left. Consequently, even unsuitable land is being turned into farmland. No wonder land grabbing is on the rise. Fertile soil is precious, but instead of looking after it, we try to extract the maximum yield from it. But overusing land or cultivating unsuitable land leads to soil degradation. We need healthy soil to produce crops and timber and store and purify water. Soil provides us and our environment with important ecosystem services. Degraded soil makes us vulnerable. Unsustainable land management is sometimes the result of ignorance, and it sometimes results from poverty, where land users have no other choice. Land degradation is driven by things like cutting down forests, overgrazing, monoculture, salination, overuse of fertilizers and chemicals, or farming on sloping ground leading to soil erosion. Not to forget climate change, which alters the drought and rain patterns. But not only does climate change contribute to soil degradation also worsens climate change because degraded soil can store less carbon. But why does all of this matter so much? Well, because it takes 2,000 years to generate about 10 centimeters of topsoil. That is a long time. Soil is a practically non-renewable resource whose overexploitation is costing us dearly. For example, Niger loses approximately 8% of its gross domestic product to overgrazing and excessive salinity in rice paddy fields. Solving these problems through sustainable land management would save 2/3 of this money. Globally, soil degradation is an expensive business. Already it costs every person on Earth $70 each year, which in total is about $490 billion. To this, one needs to add the indirect costs of environmental and humanitarian disasters, such as water shortages, yield shortfalls, or dust storms. The consequence is damage to health, forced migration, famine, and eventually conflict. But how can we prevent this? First of all, it is very difficult to take all these possible consequences into account in planning processes because it is so hard to recognize the true costs of our inaction. With the right figures, we could make the right decisions. We have to include the value of the soil services and the cost of land degradation into our calculation. then it becomes obvious that using soils in the way that most of us do today is simply not economically viable in the long run. To solve this problem, we set up the Economics of Land Degradation Initiative, ELD. We want to find out more about these actual costs by bringing together scientists, decision makers in politics and industry, and local land users. And we want to take a global approach. How high are the costs of inaction? What are the potential benefits of adopting sustainable land management practices? What needs to be done? Land degradation has to stop. Knowledge about the costs must be passed on and become part of the decision-making processes. Sustainable land management isn't free, but in the long term it is the much cheaper option. It is the only way to preserve one of mankind's most precious assets, the wonderful, fertile soil.
Panahon na para pag-usapan natin ang lupa na araw-araw nating tinatapakan at nilalakaran, katulad ng hangin, kailangan natin, ngunit kadalasang hindi pinapansin. Panahon na para pangalagaan natin ang lupa, dahil dito nakasalalay ang ating buhay. Alam mo ba na ang lupa ay nabubuo mula sa mga bato na dahan-dahang nabubulok sa tulong ng araw, hangin at ulan, hayop at halaman? 10 sentimetro na matabang lupa ang nalilikha sa loob ng 2,000 taon na agad din namang nauubos sa maikling panahon. Ang mga halaman at kagubatan ay proteksyon ng lupa. Ngunit taon-taon, 13 milyong hektarya nito ang nawawala. Dulot na rin ang epekto ng monocropping o pagtatanim ng iisang uri ng halaman lamang at pagsasaka sa mga lupang dalisdis. At dahil karaniwang iniiwang nakatiwangwang ang lupa makatapos aning, hindi maiiwasan ang pagguho nito. At tuwing tinatangay ng hangin o inaanod ng tubig, ang lupa ay tuluyang nauubos. Dahil dito, umabot sa 24 na bilyong tonelada ng lupa ang nawala noong taong 2011. Katumbas ng 3.4 tonelada bawat isang tao sa buong mundo, matanda man o bata. Mabilis na dumadami ang mga syudad at kalahating bahagi sa lupa nito ang di na maaari pang tamnan. Nagsimula na rin ang pag-aagawan ng lupa sa mundo at laganap na ang land grabbing. Dulot nito ay pagkakawatak-watak ng pamilya at pagkasira ng kabuhayan ng mga mahihirap. At dahil nawala silang ibang mapupuntahan, mga kagubatay sinisira upang matirhan. Ngayon higit kailanman, mataba at mayamang lupa ang ating kailangan. Batay sa mga pag-aaral, bababa sa kalahati ang lupang maaaring tamnan sa 2050. Ngunit ngayon pa lamang, umaabot na sa 1 bilyon ang bilang ng mga taong natutulog ng gutom. Kung hindi pagyayamanin ang ating mga lupa, inaasahang tataas pa ang bilang nito sa bawat araw. Dahil malimit nating makita na sapat ang mga paninda sa mga merkado, inaakala nating walang katapusan ang kasaganaan. Kung kaya't hindi nabibigyang halaga at pansin ang mga usapin ukol sa lupa. Tulad sa bangkong walang deposito, masasaid ang anumang kung patuloy ang pagwaldas. Isang araw, mauubos ang lahat at wala nang matitira sa atin. Ang magandang balita, alam na natin kung ano ang marapat na gawin para maiwasan ito. Kailangan lamang natandaan na dapat na pangalagaan ang lupa tulad ng anumang bagay na may buhay. Iwasan ang pagbabaon nito sa anumang uri ng aspalto o konkreto at ibang uri ng modernisasyon. Dahil hindi ito agarang napapalitan, marapat lamang na ito ay bantayan at linangin. Sa atin nakasalalay ang pagsagip sa lupa, kaya't buksan ang ating mga mata at kaisipan at isagawa ang ating natutunan upang sa hinaharap, hindi mawala ang lupang ating tinatapakan.
What is our government's policy on soil conservation and management? Do we have laws that protects our soil resources?
Maganda yung tanong po ninyo. I appreciate the question kasi do we have a policy or a law? It's been long that we are advocating for a Soil Conservation Act pero hanggang ngayon po hindi pa siya nagpa-prosper. So we really need the support lobby to our policymakers to really come up with the Soil Conservation Act.
I see. Yes. Hopefully talaga po magkaroon na ng Soil Conservation Act because we really need it. And as what was seen nga in the video, sometimes we really do forget our soil, medyo hindi siya na-prioritize, which should not be the case. So hopefully, since we have a lot of local government units that are watching then and from different government agencies, hopefully the Soil Conservation Act would really be achieved in the near future na po.
But ma'am, even then at the national level, we do not have a national law. The LGUs concerned can initiate on their own within their sphere of influence to pursue and implement soil conservation in their locality. And just as I pointed out earlier on, we have this soil conservation guide plan that would be launched this December. So it underwent consultations from different partners. So looking forward that this would be a guide towards soil conservation at different areas in the country.
Yes, indeed po, no. That's also really good, no. So to our LGUs nga, kasi it's good na mag-start tayo locally para rin yung mga national in the national level, they can also see na pwede para possible talaga siya. So let's proceed na po to our next question. This one is from one of our faculty members here in Xavier University College of Agriculture. This is from Engineer Elenito Duran. So sa first question niya po, is there already a complete updated soil map of the arable lands in the Philippines that the farmers can use as reference on types of crops that they will plant?
As I pointed out earlier, it was President Duterte who gave us a marching order, right, to come up with soil sampling and testing. And that is the output that is needed by our farmers to come up with what are suitable in their farms. So, and in that map, which we have completed for rice and for corn as well, that guides us as to where are the suitable areas and what are the amount of fertilizers, organic or inorganic, that can be used to sustain removal nutrient removal from the soil.
I see. So ma'am, saan po ba makakakuha ng copy or where can we acquire copy of these maps? Sa office niyo po ba sa BSWM or is this also available online po?
Actually, we have turned over maps to different LGUs. So they can access from the LGUs, we do have provincial and municipal offices, right? So we turned over this to the provincial level, and they could also access to the portal of the BSWM.
Okay, I see. So accessible naman pala talaga tong mga data na ito. So sa mga nanonood, to our viewers, no, please feel free to access these data because these are really useful to all of you, especially to our farmers. So now let's proceed to the second question po, still from Engineer Duran. In my experience, soil test kits are very helpful for a common farmer to update their nutrient management as per their farm soil conditions. Is BSWM still continuing to mass produce these kits for the common farmers to avail?
BSWM is not mass producing. They can avail it from through the regional offices. They need not go to BSWM. So the DA regional field officers have also access to the BSWM.
I see. Okay. So, pwede lang pala kayong pumunta sa regional offices na pinakamalapit sa inyo. Okay. That's good po. And I think since we're talking na about soil testing, soil analysis, let's go to this next question. This is from Rema Wina C. Romualdez. Sabi niya po, how to get sample for soil analysis? How much is the charge fee or is there a free soil analysis?
Actually, how to get soil samples, if you visit our website, meron po kaming mga how-tos, how to get soil sample, and you can follow it, and you can submit the soil samples to the nearest laboratory, regional laboratories for where you are near, and usually you pay for the analysis just to recoup the chemicals that are used for it. So hindi po nagcha-charge na malaki ang gobyerno para po sa soil analysis.
Okay, yes po. Tama po yun. And then sa soil sampling po, meron po talagang proper method dyan. So yun, as what Ma'am Edna nga said nga, you can visit their site and also you can visit some references. We in the Xavier University College of Agriculture also have a website na meron din kaming parang handout on how to do proper soil sampling and then how to prepare it for soil analysis din. So yun. Now let's proceed to the next question. Ito po, this is from one of our viewers pa din. What are the impacts of land use conversion on our country's soil and water resources? And what is BSWM stand on land use conversion?
Napakaganda ng tanong mo and at the same time, very controversial question. So sa una, ano ba ang impact of conversion? Well, as you would see, conversion are more often done. We see more prime agricultural areas being converted into non-agricultural uses. So what does that mean to us relative to production? That would mean less production sites for production, and that would mean also environmental concerns like, you know, when you plant rice, you have a paddy, right? And this paddy serves as catchment for rainwater. When you fill this up and add more soil to become residential, industrial, or commercial, then you alter the pathway of our water. So water seeks its own level. So if so many irrigated areas were converted to non-agricultural uses, where do you expect our rainwater to settle? So, and that's what we are experiencing. Those areas not flooded in our history have become flooded areas because where water seeks its own level. Where it is low, there you would find water. So that is just one of the impact of conversion. We are not totally against conversion, but we do have a process for land conversion, and we know that Department of Agrarian Reform is handling land conversion. In the past, the DA through the BSWM, we have this what we call NPICLOM. So we have a National Committee on Land Use Matters, wherein on the applications for conversion, it passes to the regions, and depending on the size of area for conversion, it reaches the Department of Agriculture here in Quezon City. And it is the National Committee on Land Use Matters that assess these applications that were forwarded to the Office of the Secretary. But since this NPICLOM is no longer functional, then we see that the process has been shortened, and we do hope that with lesser participation, we just hope that things would be better in terms of lessening the processing time. But we do hope that it would really serve the purpose of preserving our prime agricultural lands. So we do also recognize that we have some lands that can be used for other purposes aside from agriculture. So we just have to rationalize. That's why we have criteria for allowing applications that are really meant for non-agricultural uses. So hindi po kami pro lang sa agriculture, kasi we rationalize the use of our lands.
Yes, that's very true. And thank you so much for clearing that up nga, ma'am, no? Kasi, oo nga, there are really certain criteria that must be met para lang, para fair siya to both sides, no? Yes, thank you so much, ma'am. So now let's go to the next question. This one is somewhat related din sa previous question natin. This one is from Jose Carlo Dizon. Sabi niya, land and water degradation and land conversion is still happening, maybe because of the weak implementations of the policies protecting our land and water resources. What can you advise to the research community to further resonate our findings to our policymakers and the authorities in order to protect our soil and water resources?
We really have to join together, put our acts together, so that we could really lobby for our legislations of, as I pointed out earlier, we need a National Land Use Act. It's a policy. All these things on issue of degradation, whether that is soil, land, or water degradation, it would boil down to the use. Is it a rational use of the piece of land or a rational use for the water resource? These are issues that are part of the National Land Use Act, because the proposed National Land Use Act covers the uses, whether that is for production, for protection, for infrastructure. So there are classifications and there are guidelines to follow in zoning our areas, in our land. So this should be our guide. So the rational use or judicious use of our lands, of our soil resources matter most, and that should be put into the National Land Use Act.
Okay, thank you so much, ma'am. I hope that our researchers and our policymakers also took note of what Ma'am Edna had said, no? Kasi it's very important para talaga masulong na natin yung ang soil and water.
Ma'am, siguro maganda rin. As I pointed out earlier on, why do we have this issue of degradation? Because we lack the appreciation for our soil and water resources, right? And it is because we do not value the value that we put on the soil and on the water. These are underestimated. Kasi sabi natin, ay, ang lupa madumi, tinutuntungan lang yan. So, but we forgot the soil ecological services. So perhaps if we could, if our researchers can come up with studies on valuing our resources such that it's not just the use value, but as I pointed out in one of the slides, it's the total economic value considering the use and non-use. Then that would be good for our local, for our policymakers to recognize indeed the value or the soil ecological services that the soil provide. So that's a better way of encouraging policy makers if we see the value. How much does it cost if we neglect proper management of our soil and water?
Yes, indeed po. Totoo po yan. Kasi nga, we see soil and water nga as something unlimited kasi nakikita natin kung saan-saan. But we don't really appreciate its value. So yes, that's a very good point po, ma'am, no? To focus also our research on the appreciation of the value of soil and water resources. And since we're already talking na po about research, our next question po, nagpapatanong po, for those in the academe, for faculty and student research, what R&D priority topics do you recommend po?
Actually, personally, I'm exposing researches related to soil biodiversity. This is something that is less known to us. What is above ground is most commonly studied, but below ground, this is something that is not known to us. So I would encourage that our researchers would do studies related to soil biodiversity, especially on, as I pointed out in one of the slides, we do not have baseline on soil biodiversity as it relates to soil method genomics, right? So there are some basic studies that the academe can do. So it is best that you pursue them so that BSWM cannot do it alone. We need partners like you for us to study more what is beneath our soil. And we see that it's a host for so many organisms teeming with resources. And that would be a good contribution of the academe insofar as prioritizing R&D for soil resources.
Yes, oo nga po. That's so true. And also, no, soil biodiversity is really an interesting topic for research na. And ma'am, additional question lang po. If ever there are people who are interested to study in these fields, can they approach BSWM to help them with regards po to any assistance regarding lab testing or something? Pwede po ba silang lumapit sa BSWM?
As I pointed out earlier, the more sophisticated laboratory analysis when it comes to biological, something that is not within the domain of the BSWM right now. So we are doing also outsourcing, and we are requesting the Philippine Genome Center to help us in the identification of species as we submitted soil samples to them. So that is something that we are also limited right now. So, but for chemical analysis, our laboratories are, especially the regional laboratories, can provide assistance to our academic institutions. They need not come to the BSWM. After all, our soil laboratories now are being assessed relative to the PD 1435, which requires what are the minimum criteria to operate a soil laboratory.
Okay, that's good. Okay, thank you so much, ma'am. And I really hope that a lot of our student researchers and even faculty researchers would really look into those topics that you have mentioned, no? Para rin mas ikaaangat ng ating soil and in our soil and water resource na conservation din and research
I would
here.
also, ma'am, I would also suggest that if we could have some dialogue so that we could channel resources effectively, such that in what areas do we start? Because the Philippines is so huge, and there's a lot to spend to invest in terms of soil biodiversity. Where do we start? So it is best that we have dialogue so to prioritize studies on soil biodiversity.
Yes, that's so true. Thank you so much for that, ma'am. And I hope our faculty and students also took note of that. Now let's go to the next question. Ito po from Facebook user Dandals. Nagpapatanong po siya, are fish ponds included in the soil and water research development daw po ba?
We have the Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources, who would be in a best position to provide recommendations in the use of these areas. So we do, perhaps it would be best also that we consult the Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources.
Okay, yes. So, kasi nga, since fish pond siya, so under siya sa BFAR. Okay. Thank you, ma'am, for clearing that up po. Now, let's go to the next question. This one is from Ross May Aliwate. Sabi niya po, how can subsoil sodicity be effectively controlled in areas with poor subsurface drainage and a shallow water table?
Sodicity, which means how, I really cannot answer you right now, how best that can be done. That is an area of concern that we also have to pursue. As I shown earlier on, drainage is a concern, right? And so that is a physical property that we have to address in where it is heavy clay and water holding is a problem. Then we really have to study more on this concern.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Thank you po for that very honest answer. Now let's go to the next question. Ito po from another Facebook user is asking po, considering the devolution of some government services to the LGUs, what are BSWM's program to assist the LGUs in ensuring soil and water conservation in their municipalities?
Okay, maganda po yung tanong nyo and very timely. In the video that you have seen, the BSWM provide technical services, right? And these technical services can be for LGUs. And so the technical services of the BSWM can be accessed by the LGUs. There are some extension. It will be it's not a part of the BSWM because we are in the institution, but there are some services like relating to soil conservation where you can seek assistance on guided farms, conservation farms. That can be an option for LGUs to seek assistance from the BSWM. And also the decision tools. I have in some of the slides provided you with some decision tools. The maps that we produced, the LGUs can seek guidance on how best to use these decision tools for their comprehensive land use plan.
Okay. Okay, thank you so much. Okay, thank you so much po for that, ma'am. Those are actually very helpful nga to our LGU, especially with the transition that they will experience no, because of the devolutions of some agencies. So hopefully, talagang our LGUs would really be able no, to help or in the conservation of our soil and water resources with the help, of course, of BSWM. So po, yun na po yung last question natin. So before we end this open forum po, we'd like to ask a message from you for our viewers who are watching.
Thank you so much, ma'am. So to all our viewers from Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao, and most especially to our host, thank you so much for hearing us today and giving the opportunity to share with you some of our thoughts relative to the soil and water resources research and development, and looking forward that as God has meant for each one of us to be good stewards, may we all be good stewards, contributing to the call of actions. We are all land using, we are all soil using, so let us contribute in ensuring that our soil resources would be managed sustainably. And to our academic institutions, the issue of sustainable soil management was well expressed. So let us be guided in our studies, that we really pursue sustainable soil management according to what is prescribed in the World Soil Charter, revised World Soil Charter, and we have other documents to help us in the assessment. We have the protocol for for sustainable soil management in the assessment, and the different materials released by FAO are meant really to encourage us to become active partners in pursuing sustainable soil management from the different groups, whether we are from the academic institutions, from the LGUs, from the government institutions, and even the private groups. And we need support from the Department of Education. DepEd as represented here, sana po in the different webinars pa, hopefully they could be actively engaged in development of soil curriculum or soil education for the country. And also our TESDA. So let us consider, let us review our curriculum for or training for soil and water-related trainings. So let us align it relative to the needs to consider not just the provisioning, but the other soil ecological services that this offer. So these are basic resources. So as the president, former president of the United States has said, anong sabi po? The nation that do not take care of its soil resources, we expect this not to prosper, but rather this nation or these countries that do not manage sustainably these resources, but we do not want that to happen to us, right? So a nation that destroys its soil destroys itself. So let us all partake of the active stewards so that our soil resources would not be destroyed, but rather would be preserved. And let us ensure that its use will not be just for the present use, but for our future generation. So yun lang po at maraming salamat din sa ating host, the Xavier University, the College of Agriculture for this fourth series of the webinar. Indeed, we are so honored that you have considered BSWM as one of the source of information relative to soil and water resources, research and development. Maraming salamat po at pagpalain po tayo ng Panginoong Jesus.